Hi guys, welcome back to the Astro Imaging channel. Tonight's session is an open session on astrophotography in general. So I've asked in our chat for a bunch of different questions, and we've actually gotten a few. What I'm going to do right now, before I even go into the initial stuff, I want to show off how do I get to your chat, because obviously you might be watching this on YouTube, but we do this live every Sunday, 9:30 Eastern Daylight Time. If you want to get in on the conversation, this is the best way. So what I'm doing right now is I'm sharing my screen and I'm jumping over to our website, the Astro Imaging channel. I have to do this really quickly so I don't hear the crazy echo. Bear with me. There we go. Paused it. So you go to our website, you see this bouncy box right here. You click that. It's going to pull up our chat. Basically, there are all the questions coming in. You can see. You can pop out the chat like that. Makes it more convenient to watch the video, type in your questions, and play along. And that is my suggestion. Join in. Try and catch us live. But obviously, if you don't, you can get us on our website here or on YouTube. What I'm going to show up now, this week's image of the week is an Eagle Nebula. Excuse me, a great image of the Eagle Nebula. I was showing off my astrophotography to some non-astrophotographers the other day, and first they were amazed, they were wowed, couldn't imagine amateurs doing that. I'm sure the same things you guys usually hear. But what he asked was, have you ever shot the Pillars of Creation? And it's funny, I had to go back like 8 or 9 years to find anything that I had shot. And I would love to redo it, but it is in a terrible location for me. So I'm going to have to find a way to get it. Maybe have to take my gear out somewhere, but I have it in my head that I really want to shoot this. So I'm glad to see when this popped up because, Andrew, you did a great job on it. Definitely worth checking it out on our website so you can see the full resolution version. But basically, SHO, false color, oxygen cyan, hydrogen is yellow-orange, and sulfur as red, using a William Optics GT81. So a relatively wide field, and a field that I think we're typically not accustomed to seeing. Usually it's centered on that, but it's nice to see the entire nebula that is part of. Really good job. Thank you, Andrew, for submitting. And let's see here. Gotta be careful.
Those are really nice colors. You did a really good job on it.
Yeah, I love the way it stands off the cyan right there. You know, when you, I don't know if, no, you guys are staring at, you guys see the window. You guys don't see me. But when you start looking closer and closer and closer and you really want to dig deep into that, that's when you've got a great image. Really just draws you in. And obviously an iconic image. The fact that non-astronomers know the Pillars of Creation, just an iconic image that we can do a pretty darn good job of from our driveways. Yep, I'm safe to close that window. Sorry about that. All right, got my window back. The first question, something about someone who knows about image scale or arc seconds per pixel. So I want to basically, how do you explain image scale? Let me think.
It's
I don't know if I want
how many arc seconds of sky each pixel takes up. Mm-hmm. That's the simplest explanation of it.
Mm-hmm. Well, right. What I don't know is whether I need to dig in deep and start talking about number of pixels per sensor, size of the pixels. Basically, you do. Basically, I think to make this the most practical, what I'll say is there's a limited number of sensors that are available to us. And basically, you can put any of these sensors on any telescope, but certain sensors, because of their pixel size and their overall size, are going to be more well suited to particular telescopes based on their focal length. So we get into a bit of sampling in that, and sampling is basically how many pixels you're going to use per arcsecond of sky. If you are oversampling, we take a generic, or I'll say a general rule of thumb that we're aiming for 1 arcsecond per pixel to get good resolution, to get what I'll say is maximum resolution in average skies. So as a rule of thumb, if you're aiming for that 1 arcsecond per pixel, you're going to look at the telescope that you have, or possibly you're going to look at the sensor that you have, and you're going to say, okay, I have an 8300, a Kodak 8300 sensor. The pixels are 5.4 microns. So I optimally, if I'm aiming for 1 arcsecond per pixel, would want, you're going to go in, you're going to do the math, and I would actually use a calculator for this, but you're going to determine what focal length you would want to use to have the appropriate, have that, to have that sensor match the telescope. Now, I'm going to qualify that in one way. A lot of us are not happy with that 1 arcsecond per pixel. A lot of us optimally would like to be closer to 0.7 arcseconds per pixel because we think we do get a bit more resolution out of it. After that 0.7, we might not be getting quite as much. But in general, that determines your image scale. Now, that is for long focal length imaging, when you're pushing the resolution maximum. If you are doing wide field imaging, you are probably going to have sampling well below that. You might be 2 arcseconds per pixel. You might be 3 arcseconds per pixel, but you're not, your goal is not maximum resolution. So you'll be satisfied with that. Wow. I don't know if that was a good answer, because what I'm thinking when we're talking about that is coming at it from a DSLR standpoint is things like crop factor, where, for example, what I think might, I'm not going to say is going to be the future of astrophotography, because there's no one future of astrophotography. You know, I think the future of scientific astrophotography is somehow finding a lens that's going to be 3, maybe 6, 8,000 miles wide, so that we can get maximum resolution. And maybe it's not an optical lens, maybe it's going to be a different type of lens. But the point being, there's no one perfect telescope. But what I think is going to be the future of amateur astrophotography is smaller lenses, smaller sensors, smaller pixels. And so why? Once we can get to that 0.71 arcsec per pixel and not be limited by the resolution of the telescope, then using the crop factor, using that smaller sensor, you're going to be able to enlarge galaxies to look pretty darn good. Will it replace a 14-inch or a 16-inch or 20-inch RC professionally mounted on a $20,000 or $30,000 mount that's optimized? No, it won't replace that type of gear. But what it will do is it will allow a lot of amateurs to just kind of step right into the hobby. And with what I'll call, what I'd hope would happen, what I'll call the iPadization of astrophotography. You don't have to unlock the most amazing features. What you have to do is unlock some basic features and just make it really easy for teachers to show to students, parents to show to kids. As technology unlocks and we can take that telescope outside, put it on our driveway, automatically have it align, and then pull up on an iPad and show our kids pretty impressive galaxy shots, stuff that basically we're accomplishing today, but requires that technical know-how. So that's what I'm thinking. Wow, that was a really long-winded answer for arc second per pixel.
Adam?
Yes.
Could I take a stab at this?
Yes, go ahead.
Let me start by sharing my screen and then going over to Ron Wadowski's CCD Calculator. It depends a lot on why you're asking the question in the first place, and I don't see any follow-up questions from the original questioner. But this is a very old program that
he did clarify afterwards, Alex, that he just wanted to. He said, "Is 1 arc-second better than 2 arc-second?"
Is that all?
No, that's the clarification.
Okay.
The second question he asked.
Okay, then this is useless to you all. But this is my favorite way of finding out what your pixel coverage is. And if you change scopes, for those of you who are doing something, still have the question of some kind, which always happens. If we've got a different size scope, like here's a Borg, 50 millimeter. See how the picture changes? No, don't change that. See how the picture changes? It just and your arc seconds per pixel and everything will change. There's lots of these calculators around. You just go out and find yourself one. Sky Safari's got one. All the planetarium programs have one for you. Okay.
Yeah, and Terry's pointing out one clarification that resolution is determined by the aperture of the scope, which is different than pixel scale. So my point is not to say that you're going to get the absolute same quality image with those smaller sensors, smaller pixels, smaller scope. What it will allow you to do is put it on a cheaper, more available mount to the backyard observer. You, I hope, won't have to invest. In 10 years, I hope that the quality of everything trickles down to more the amateur market. But that's a good point, is resolution. If you want maximum resolution, you need bigger scope, you need aperture. There is no substitute for that.
Well, Adam, there's another consideration in that you can have better resolution, but you don't want to exceed your seeing conditions. And that is, if you have seeing conditions of 2 versus 1, your arc seconds per pixel should be about half of what your seeing conditions are. So there's no sense in going deeper in resolution if your seeing conditions really don't justify it. So the rule of thumb that I was always taught is that if you have 0.5 arc seconds per pixel, the best match is 1 arc second seen. But if you have 2 arc seconds seen, then your best match is 1 arc second per pixel.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And there's a follow-up question, kind of related. It's how to calculate image circle, and does sensor size matter to fit the image circle? And I would say focal length and sensor size, not pixel size, but the sensor size, determine your field of view. So the longer your telescope is, the smaller field of view. The bigger your sensor is, the larger the field of view. And you can make those smaller and larger and change the field of view. So you could take a 1,000 millimeter telescope and put a 20 millimeter diagonal sensor. You would have an X amount of field of view. If you put a 40 millimeter sensor, it would be as much. But if you take the 20 millimeter sensor and put a 500 millimeter telescope on it, your field of view is still going to get bigger. So it's a combination of both. And there are, Alex showed one. There are many field of view calculators out there, and you can experiment. You could look, hey, I want to use this telescope with this camera, and then actually go to an object. Hey, will Andromeda Galaxy fit into my field of view? And they will actually draw it out for you, show you, and then you'll have a great idea of what you're talking about.
And remember, image circle is a function of the telescope. How much you get of that image circle is a function of the size of your sensor.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
I was thinking the question, how do you measure image circle?
I think you usually get it from the manufacturer. Or you can put a piece of cardstock at the focal point, and you can measure exactly what that circle looks like right there. But in order to actually find out what it is, you could call the manufacturer and ask them what the image circle is.
Yeah, it's usually published.
Yeah, that's called the corrected image circle.
Well, I was going to say there's a difference, though, between the image circle, the illuminated image circle, and the corrected image circle.
Right.
They'll illuminate a massive area, but corrected wise, if you want larger than basically your typical DSLR sensor, you're talking good scopes, optimized scopes for photography.
Yeah, there are not many telescopes that could cover like a medium format sensors. Most of them are made for 90% of the telescopes are made for APS-C size sensors, and then there's like maybe another 5% that are made for full frame sensors, and then the rest of them, the last 2% that could cover bigger than full frame, such as like a 16803. Now you're getting into like really, really expensive stuff.
Yeah. Just seeing if there's any other questions on this. I see a bunch on a different topic that I am going to jump to right now. So Jeffrey, transitioning from DSLR to mono CCD, and he'd love to hear people's perspectives or suggestions for managing data acquisition, integration time between narrowband and RGB data. You just need 10 subs of RGB, but 30 plus of H alpha, O3, etc. to get a decent color integration. So I could take this a few ways. You're correct with RGB, that 10 subs or so. I'd probably bump it up a little bit more from 10 subs. Yes, first of all, obviously it depends on the target. Throwing that into my head. So basically, the way we usually say it is you can kind of abuse the RGB data. You don't need a ton of subs because you're getting all of your detail from your luminance or your narrowband. So you can neglect the RGB and say get those 10 subs, put some chromatic noise reduction and then some luminance noise reduction, and basically blur the image so that the noise disappears, and really just use that blurry color data over a crisp luminance image to get your image off. But the way you're asking your question, I just want to clarify a few things. For narrowband, it's not really the number of subs. It's the overall integration time.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I think the question is kind of formed a little incorrectly, right? Because number of subs, you could take 5-second subs, you could take 30 of them, still that doesn't mean anything, right? We should really look at it as how many hours or how much integration per filter instead of how many subs per filter.
Exactly. Because if you're in dark skies, then 10 subs, 5 minutes, 7 minutes RGB, 10 minutes RGB, you're probably going to get some decent RGB data. But if I were to be in my skies here, I can only get 3-minute subs RGB, and 10 of them probably wouldn't give me enough color data on a galaxy, for example, to satisfy me. So I'd have to push it up a little bit more. So you should be focusing more on the overall integration time. And then, so to give you an example, I know Eric just posted it, but off the top of my head, I'm going to say probably 3-4 hours of RGB. That's like an hour of RG of R, an hour of G, an hour of B, and then possibly 7 to 10 of luminance if you choose to go that way. Or if you're doing an RGB, an H alpha RGB image, you might have 10 to 20 hours of H alpha. If you're doing pure narrowband, that depends a lot on the object. I would do 10 to 20 hours of H alpha. If it's weak in O3 and S2, then I might do what I call the neglect method again, and I might take just 7 hours of O3, 7 hours of S2, maybe a little bit less, maybe 5 hours of O3, 5 hours of S2, blur the heck out of it, and then use it the same way, but use the H alpha for the luminance to give me that crisp detail image, and then just use the O3 and S2 with a combination of the H alpha to get the RGB component of it. I don't know.
Adam?
Yes.
I had a couple of thoughts there.
Go right ahead.
For RGB, the amount you collect really depends on the speed of your setup, speed of your scope. For example, with the Honders that we have with 3.8, really 2 hours is plenty. Now, if you got an F9, I would say, right, you probably want 4 hours of RG and B.
Yep.
And whether you want to collect luminance separately or not really depends on the object. But my experience is if it's a galaxy, you want to get luminance because you're really going to get detail. If it's a star field with, say, an emission nebula and you're doing your RGB, then you can do an LRGB just from the combination of the RGB, and that'll be perfectly adequate. The same thing applies to narrowband, the HOS filters. You want to get as much H until you really have a fine image. And again, that depends on your focal length or your speed of your scope. As far as O and S, I mean, since I always do tone mapping, then I don't want to say I don't care about O or S, but I don't care, and I bin everything too. And that reduces the amount of time that I have to have, since in the end, you're ending up with a starless image and producing a tone map. Now, in some cases where you really want to get detail out of the oxygen, that doesn't apply, and you want to get as much oxygen as you have hydrogen, and then perhaps do a bicolor image. But you really have to consider whether you have an F3 or an F9 or something in between on how much you collect, as well as the brightness of the object and so on and so forth, what you said before.
That's a great point. There's no one taking F ratio in as a factor, and then the quality of your skies, or I should say the light pollution, and there's no one correct answer. You just have to go until the image is crisp enough. And I would say, as Eric kind of reaffirmed, the luminance that you're going for is crisp enough, whatever that may be. But yes, if there's structure in the O3, you can't neglect it. You need enough O3 to bring out that structure, and then somehow you've got to get that into the luminance. So it might involve a combination with the H alpha somehow. Whether it be, I don't think you would Eric, you wouldn't tone map that, right? Maybe we lost him. But
no, I'm sorry. I was trying to think, but nothing happened.
If you're combining O3 with H alpha, would you tone map that, or would that be one where you would probably try?
No, I probably wouldn't. The only thing you're going to have to consider is that when you do your bicolor image, you have to figure out what your luminosity is going to be, so you don't end up with halos around your stars. So it would depend. I think I might end up doing it both ways, and see how the stars came out. But I mean, there are a few objects where oxygen is pretty bright, and you have to consider it as important as the hydrogen alpha.
Yeah, Crescent Nebula stands out as probably the most, to get that outer blue shell, that really makes the image is one that stands out to me.
Yeah,
Where-
the small planetaries, those bright planetaries, generally have a lot of oxygen. But if you're just going with your emission nebula, then again, I would just say bin oxygen and sulfur, and don't make yourself crazy by trying to get 10 hours of each.
And I'll tell you where the neglect method fails is when you have an emission nebula with some sort of reflection nebula in the same field. That is probably the most difficult type of object to image. At least from reflection nebulas are difficult because they're dim. And they have a lot of dust, and it's really nice if you could bring that dust out. But I do think to get the maximum detail on the H-alpha, you really want that long narrowband. So a lot of the times when I try and do it, I know I struggle, is you take really strong H-alpha, but then you also have to go right in and take lots and lots of RGB and just hope to work that reflection nebula into the foreground. And then when you go through the combination, you're kind of doing a similar combination to when you're combining H-alpha and O3 with structure in the O3. But I also think combination of emission and reflection nebula images are amazing. Probably some of the most dramatic.
Yeah, I mean, I would agree. I love those ones that have the nice blue emission, and then or the red emissions and then the blue reflection. Actually, I proselytized Tolga to use a lightning method for the hydrogen alpha to bring out the red, and just use the RGB to bring out the reflection part. And again, collect as much data until you can really see that blue reflection, and then use the hydrogen alpha as a red lightning layer, and that brings out the emissions without overpowering what is the reflection area.
Yeah.
And when Eric tells me to do something about narrowband, I say, yes, sir, I don't argue.
Well, that's not narrowband. I mean, that's RGB, but you know.
I know, you know what I mean.
Yeah, but those, I agree, those reflection emission nebulas, they are the most interesting. Like the Iris is just a beautiful thing to work on, and it's nice. The narrowband Hubble palette images are nice, but it's nice to have a real RGB image where you can really bring out the emission at the same time without losing the color of the stars and the color of the reflection nebula.
So again, we have someone asking about nebulosity. Nebulosity 4. Anyone in the room use nebulosity 4? El Mico is looking for a good routine. I'm not sure if we're going to be able to explain that on this show. But if anyone has anything they can help them with, feel free to chime in. But otherwise, I'm going to say we might have to.
Yeah, I think you skipped a question before that. There's a question about using UV IR cut filters with monochrome sensors. Should I use? Do you need to use UV IR cut, which is an L filter, for monochrome CMOS cameras? It doesn't. I mean, it doesn't matter. The CMOS in this case is irrelevant.
Oh yeah, that's way below it for me. But yeah, keep going.
So yes, absolutely. So monochrome cameras are sensitive in all bands of light, including ultraviolet and infrared, and most telescopes that most refractive telescopes don't focus all light at the same spot. They only designed to focus RGB light. They're not made for UV and IR, but your camera is sensitive to that, so it will record IR light, and your star will look soft. It will look as if it's out of focus because it's also getting the infrared light. So it's absolutely necessary to use a L filter, L filter is a UV IR cut filter.
Thank you, Tolga. Chris L, file name nomenclature. I believe, if I remember correctly, it was the collaborations video. and I think Josh Smith might have presented it. I know we did 2 or 3. It's one of the collaboration videos, and I think Josh presented it. I know exactly what you're talking about, but I don't remember specifically which video it's in. And he was asking about file naming nomenclature. What we basically did was we did a large collaboration, and to make sure that we were all on the same page and able to process the massive amounts of data, or I should say, to make it easy on David so that he could keep it all straight and process all the data for us, we had to come up with basically an organized way to identify it.
I'm going to submit that for APOD on David's behalf. He did all the work. And, you know, that came out really nice, but we didn't do anything about it.
Yeah, was that the Hubble Variable Nebula?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm just going to submit it on and put his name on it underneath it.
I have to tell you, Tolga, before you do that, I showed it to Robert Nimenoff when he was out here. He said it was the best one he ever saw. For what it's worth.
I have no doubt that it would get APOD.
Well, I don't know about that, but
let's not go there.
Okay, can anyone give me some advice about what gear I can store or leave in his observatory shed? Okay, summer gets up to 106 Fahrenheit, and it can get as low as 0 degrees Fahrenheit. Is it okay to leave focuser, camera attached to the scope? I would say yes. You're actually basically, first of all, you're well within the ranges that the cameras are built for. And the cameras are built slightly to handle slightly more extreme temperatures than what I'd say the typical boards are meant to handle. Like, for example, I'd be more concerned about your computer because it's not designed to be operating in those temperatures than I am actually your focuser, your mount, basically any of those things.
Adam, can I pop in here?
Sure.
Yeah. I run an observatory out in the bush in Australia. It gets a bit warm during the summertime. I have a different schedule during the summer. I didn't mention this the other week, but I have that one industrial computer that's allows me switching equipment on and off. And what I do during the summertime is I actually shut the PC down, which is a small industrial computer, and then the other computer turns it back on at dusk on a schedule. So when power is supplied in the BIOS is set to restart. So during the daytime, I basically power every bit of equipment off except one little tiny controller. And then at 6, 7, 8 o'clock at night, it'll flick on and all the equipment will come up sequentially and everything's happy. So it's all about protecting your equipment. With the cooler temperatures, I just run a heating strap on the optics 24/7 so I don't get dew on the optics. And that's all I worry about. That and big spiders crawling in the telescope.
Let's see. Alex is letting everyone know that if you are in Southern California, there is a rocket launch tonight at 7:21, I'm assuming, Pacific time. So you should be able to see it, and the weather is clear. A few links posted in chat. First, about a calculator, the bintel.com astronomy calculator for determining arc seconds per pixel. And then a good discussion on ATIK Camera's website about the 1 to 2 arc second per pixel rule and when to break it. So an interesting way to look at that. Does synthetic luminance channel offer advantages over direct luminance. Yes. So a synthetic luminance is when you take your R, G, and B filters, and rather than taking that fourth filter, that luminance filter, you use the data from your RGB filters. You calibrate them, you register and combine them. Then you combine the channels, and you extract the luminance. Okay, so what is the advantage of that? First of all, it's one fewer filter. So I'm not going to say you're saving time, because I actually think you would be saving time by shooting a luminance and then RGB. But what you are doing is you're able to take advantage of the filter's natural light pollution resistance. A luminance filter is going to allow all of the light in, whereas the RGB filters all tend to have cutoffs. The better filters all tend to have cutoffs for light pollution. And if you shoot anywhere where there's a lot of light pollution, really, you need to be able to cut it out. Luminance filters are basically useless where I shoot from. So I use the synthetic luminance to get around that. What is the disadvantage of that? Well, I'm going to say if you're in optimal skies, then I think the better way to do it would be to shoot lots of time on your luminance to get the maximum resolution. Basically, just keep shooting the luminance. I think Eric's method is just shoot the luminance until your full width max stops dropping, and then when basically you're at that point, shoot a little bit of an RGB and then combine it with it. Like I said, neglect the RGB, but get that luminance rock solid.
Actually, that's Adam. That's almost right. Keep shooting luminance for galaxies. It's different for star fields or emission, but for galaxies. And then each, as you accumulate your luminance, look at your SNR, and you'll find that after so many hours, it'll start to plateau, and that's probably the limit. I mean, that's going to be the limit of your telescope seeing and camera, and that's a good place to start.
Oh, you're looking at your SNR.
For some reason, SNR, not
for some reason, I was looking at your. I thought you were looking at your star shape or something.
No, I mean the eccentricity. If you accumulate enough L, you're going to end up drizzling, and therefore you're going to your star shape is going to get better. Your eccentricity is going to get less. You're going to weight your luminance in any case, so you're going to give more weight to those which have a full width half max. But I always look as my stopping point as the when the SNR starts to plateau off.
Gotcha.
Now that can kind of drive you crazy because what is the stopping point? I mean, it could be 2 nights. 2 nights of hydrogen alpha on a bright object is really all you need. But for, again, a galaxy, you want to accumulate a few nights until you really see that your SNR is plateaued off. And at that point, you can push that data and get as much detail out of the galaxy, as is possible with your setup and your seeing conditions.
Great. Any recommendations for attaching plastic to metal, such as a power brick to a tripod? Tried heavy-duty Velcro and heavy-duty double-sided tape. I don't know.
Tie wrap?
Well, I'm sorry, what was that? Like a
tie wrap, like a zip tie?
Zip tie, right. You could try a zip tie. Sometimes it's a combination of a zip tie and something else. I'm not quite sure. It kind of depends on the shape of the tripod and the shape of the power.
Yeah, I was just going to say, like if it's a chrome tripod, the Velcros work because, it sticks very good. But if it's like a powder-coated type of thing, then it doesn't.
Right.
So, but the best bet is just a tie wrap or a zip tie or whatever whatever they're called. I mean, we call them tie wraps. I think the tie wrap is a brand name from 3M, like Kleenex, you know, and it's, you know, it locks in, and the only thing is you would have to leave it there, or you would have to use a new tie wrap every time you use it because they're usually one use.
You know, I'm sure they're available on. I'm sure you can get them anywhere, but Astrophysics has these Velcro. They're like Velcro zip ties, so you could take them off and put them back on, and they give you tons of them when you buy your Astrophysics scope. I'm sure they're available for order, but they're pretty handy. And it has a loop at the end so that you can treat it like a zip tie. It's not like you're just wrapping the Velcro around and hoping it stays there. It actually loops and then kind of locks in. So I use that to do a lot of stuff. I treat it like a zip tie, but Elias is saying zip ties are a pain if you're breaking stuff down and setting it back up. That's why those are really handy. Dithering question. Haven't used it yet.
Just you know the type of this is just the type of Velcro, but it doesn't. This is the type that if you guys have Easy Pass.
Yeah.
The Easy Pass is you know, it doesn't have a male and it doesn't have a male and a female. It's just both sides are the same. Those are really good because you don't have to worry about which is which, and you can just stick them anywhere, and they work really well. I'm looking up the name for it right now. Like what is the official name for it? I can't find it, but I think they're still called Velcro.
I think it's just an industrial Velcro because it's like rigid on both ends rather than having a fuzzy side and a.
Right. Exactly. Yeah.
And here we go. Oh, I can't copy and paste from there, darn. But yes, they're available. Velcro ties available on eBay. Okay, dithering question. Haven't used it yet, but from reading about it, does the mount tracking software trick the auto guider camera image to think the star moved 1 pixel or what you set it at? The camera image is then actually not true, and the mount software moves the mount to recenter the star, which creates the dither effect. Yes. I mean, tricks, yes. It just tells it to move a little bit this way in a random direction, a random amount. But in a sense, in essence, yes. That's basically what it does. And by moving it slightly and moving it randomly, it helps to remove basically any pattern noise. Because any pattern noise that is in the image will integrate if it's not removed some way. So you would hope that some of it calibrates out, but the dithering just kind of gives it a little bit more information that can help it. I shouldn't say gives it more information, but helps get rid of that pattern that could be on the sensor.
It also gets rid of hot and cold pixels.
Yep.
Which I found out since I've been using it forever because I was told to use it. I actually ran once without it, and I could not get rid of those darn cold pixels. I mean, I literally had to go blot them out separately. It was terrible. So dither is good.
Okay, question. Could you explain what tone mapping exactly means? And I actually brought this up a couple of years ago because the term tone mapping isn't, I don't know where it came from to describe what we do. I don't think it's an accurate way to describe what we use, what we refer to. So basically what we refer to as tone mapping is removing the stars in an image. So by iteratively shrinking and blurring and kind of pulling the data from outside of the stars, just kind of iteratively getting rid of them, we can actually remove the stars from the image. And for nebula images, it allows you to, for O3, for example, for S2, it allows you to really pull the detail out a bit more. I don't want to say detail, pull the structure, make the structure brighter so that when you go in and combine it, you have more color. Remember, the brighter you can make structure in the O3 and S2 pre-combination or for the combination, the more color you're going to have when it's finally combined. But because it's so weak in signal, if you start pulling it out, if you start stretching the image with the stars in it, you just can't go very far. You're going to get giant halos. You're going to get all sorts of residuals in there. It's just going to make it ugly. So we remove the stars in one of the early steps, then pull the nebula out, then combine them, then put the stars back in. But in general, tone mapping just means removing the stars. And I'm not sure why it was called tone mapping, because I think tone mapping has some specific meanings to other fields.
Right, we use tone mapping in a different way. It's just mapping colors to bring out dynamic ranges, but we use it as you've described in order to balance out the primary. You can actually do it with RGB, but we use it primarily to balance out the H, O, and S images in order to bring out, to define more where those gases and emissions are in the nebula. And if you would do that normally, what you would do, you would make the stars in the O and S giant and form the giant halos, which we all don't want.
Yep.
Well, actually, lately I started using that same method on RGB images.
Yeah, you can.
What I do is I'll process the galaxy separate. I'll have a galaxy image. I'll make two RGB images. One galaxy only. I use it to process the galaxy, and I have another RGB image that I make my stars as the way I want them. Then I'll combine them back together, because sometimes you want to do something to the galaxy, and you don't want that process to happen to the stars. And of course, you could do that with masks and stuff, but masks, sometimes they don't give you the best results. You can see the edge of the mask, and then if you feather the mask too much, then you still get a little bit of that process, whatever you're doing, into the star. So it's just best to remove it, do whatever you have to do, and then put the stars back in.
Yeah, I have never been very proficient at tone mapping, but I can absolutely see that once you are good enough at it, it's probably the best way to pull out detail without making stars ugly. And I mean, that's basically the key of what we do, right? You're trying to pull out the maximum amount of detail, but you're pulling out, your stars are going to get ugly when you do that. Oh.
Yeah, the other thing to consider is when you're doing, if we're talking about tone mapping for narrowband images, in the end, star color has no meaning there in a narrowband image. So in the end, if you use hydrogen alpha or some combination of hydrogen alpha, oxygen, and sulfur as your luminance layer, your stars should be white, even though in an RGB image, they obviously would be colors. There are people that put in the RGB stars in a Hubble palette image, which personally I'm against, but I know there are people that are doing that. But that's another kind of discussion.
Okay, Ray, he has a question. When he's focusing in Sequence Generator Pro, there's an option to select how many pixels for 1 by 1. and then and this is if it is not appropriate. So I'm not 100% sure what your question is, because I can see this going a few different ways. First of all, in Sequence Generator Pro, if you're using autofocus, you can use binning. So when you're saying one by one, I'm binning is standing out in my mind that you're not binning, but you can use 2 by 2 binning. And what would that allow you to do? It might allow you to take a shorter exposure. If you're doing high resolution imaging, there probably isn't that much of a detriment to doing a 2 by 2 bin and letting it be a slightly quicker exposure. If you're concerned that you're not getting enough stars in there. So that's standing out in my mind. So maybe it's the binning option in Sequence Generator Pro. The other thing that possibly is how many pixels for 1 by 1. I don't know if it's a region of interest thing. You might be able to select a region of interest in Sequence Generator Pro so that you only want. Oh, I wouldn't think that a Sequence Generator Pro, because their autofocus routine relies on a number of different stars. I think I've got it with the first answer, but I'm not sure. Ray, I'm just not quite sure, so I hope that answered something for you. Okay, Nichols, if the frames captured in narrowband are extremely dark, hardly revealing many stars, how does the plate solving happen? Does the plate solving software auto stretch the frames before doing the plate solving? So first of all, the plate solving software is used to linear images, and it's used to really dim with just little points for the stars. But that said, when I'm plate solving with a narrowband filter in front of it, now keep in mind, plate solving, if you have a CCD camera with narrowband filters, but you have room for a luminance filter, plate solve with the luminance filter, use a 5-second exposure, get the location, have it resync on that area, reslew to that area, then switch to the narrowband filter so that you could do quick captures for the plate solve. Or bin it 2 by 2, bin it 3 by 3, and extend the exposure time. And it should pull out the stars. Remember, the stars are bright basically across a number of different wavelengths. If you probably wouldn't take, say, the O2 and try and, or excuse me, the O3 and try and plate solve with that. You'd probably take the H alpha because they're going to be slightly brighter in the H alpha. Or better, use a luminance, or use an R filter, or a G filter, or a B filter, assuming it works into your routine, assuming you have enough spaces for it in your filter wheel. That'd be the way I'd go. We do have the developer of Astro Pixel processor coming on at the end of the month to present for us. So I know that a lot of people have been asking about that. We finally got them, and we're just getting the details on it sorted out, but you'll see that posted at some time. We are coming up towards the end of the hour. Let me see. I just wanted to check quickly. I'm going to skip a few. I do apologize for this because I do want to say this, and I want to get it organized. Guys, get ready to bookmark something for me, because Alex, oh my goodness, it's not letting me copy and paste this stuff. There we go. Alex has volunteered some data. Alex, would you mind telling us what the data is of, where it comes from, and basically just the initial details of it? I'll go on as to what we're going to do with it. Do we still have Alex in the room? We might not, but then I'll just talk about it. So Alex has volunteered some data. I just posted it in our chat. Bookmark that for us, because over the course of this week, excuse me, over the course of this week, we are all going to process this data. Next Sunday, I'm going to try and do a slight walkthrough of the data. And if we have time at the end of that session, we're going to all compare our results. If we don't have time, I believe we're going to pull it into the next session. We'll just have a share and basically a share and compare show. But it'll give us some stuff to do. But basically what we want to do is next week, you're going to see how I process it. Then we're going to see everyone's results. And whoever really does a great job with it, maybe we're going to ask you to tell us what you've done differently. And just, you know, we've done it before. We've gotten some great results in the past. So this time will give us a different opportunity. I am going to try and get this posted onto the website basically as soon as possible, immediately after this show, so you'll see it. It will be above or below the video. But yeah, download it, give it a shot, and see what we get. Guys, thank you all for watching. Like I said, Astro Pixel processor at the end of the month. Leading up to that, we're going to have this, what I'll call Alex's Astro processing show, but I'm going to be processing it. Well, we're all going to be processing it. So thank you, guys. We will see you next weekend, same time. Good night.